Hello everyone, and welcome to another Boomi How-To. In this video, I'm going to be going over each of the API types that you can configure in your shared web server. There are three that you can actually pick from. It's basic, intermediate, and advanced. Basic allows for no authentication or basic authentication using this authentication token. You're only going to be using the one token for any API calls that you make to that port using basic authentication. So this would be the one and only uh, token you would use for the actual API call. And for basic as well as intermediate, for calls made to this API type, you're going to be using the base URL for API request as the base URL when you're making the call. The endpoint path is going to be found within the operation of your actual process. So you'd be using this simple URL path for REST request. And then for the SOAP, you would use the SOAP one. But you can add, you can even add more to the path just to differentiate from other ones. So you can do like test. You can see it populate here with the simple URL path. So you would copy this to whatever you're using to make the call as the endpoint, and then save it. That's for intermediate and basic. So the next one, speaking of that, we're going to go over to intermediate. This one has basic authentication as a type, but instead of using one dedicated token for all the calls, you can set it on the user basis. So you can add a bunch of users here, and each user has their own username and token that you can generate. So they'd all be unique to that user. Also allows for API or process filtering and IP filtering. So you can do a little bit more with intermediate. There's also a couple more authentication types other than basic. You can use client certificate, which would allow the use of you can upload a certificate to the actual shared web server. And there's client certificate header, which you would use a header instead. You would pass your certificate in a header instead. And custom would be, it can be configured in a variety of different ways. It's entirely up to you. And the last one is advanced. It's similar to intermediate with the user management page, but you can also configure cores with the advanced API type. It also allows for one additional authentication type being gateway. And you can use, if you have a gateway attached to the environment this shared web server is hosted on, then you would be able to actually authenticate through that gateway. The gateways can be configured within your API management. But that goes oh no, there's one more thing I wanted to go over actually. With the advanced type, you're not going to be using the simple URL path. Instead, you're going to be using an API service component to make these calls. The full path with the advanced type, so the simple URL will not work anymore. You're going to have to configure one here. So you could add a process to the API service component that it would call or reference whenever you hit that path. To actually make the call to this endpoint, you would still use the base URL for API request, but you would append this, and then you could add multiple endpoints, but depending on what endpoint you want to hit, you would just use that name. So for this one, it would be HTTPS example URL, then the port /ws/rest/new. That would be the path for the advanced API type for the API service component. But that brings us to the end of our API types and our just general overview of them. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.